Now, all right. So you wrote this session?
Yes, I did.
Beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So my name is Laura Bond, and I'm a brand new assistant principal in Hightstown High School for the 10th grade. I've been on the job for less than a year. I also sit on a school board, elementary school, K to 6, in the town right next to where Justin teaches, phys ed.
Nice. And I live in Hamilton, so I know Hightstown very well.
So I guess I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, because I had too many people this story, probably less than a dozen. I taught social studies at West Windsor Plainsboro High School North. I had taught Darun Ravi. I was the last social studies humanities teacher that he had before he went to Rutgers and roomed with Tyler Clemente. That was in September of 2010. That experience really shattered my sense of how I viewed my instruction. I, in many ways, regarded the curriculum as like the driver of my instructional delivery. And I felt guilty. I felt like I had blood on my hands, and that I was responsible for, his decision-making, his learning, and I took responsibility for that. About 9 weeks later, my high school showed Race to Nowhere, and it was funded by the PTA, and that was a movie that came out in 2009, and the main high school, Monte Vista High School, on my way home, I called my brother who lived in California, right in the Bay Area where the film was videoed, made about one of the schools. And I called my brother, Robert, and I said, Rob, I just saw this movie at my high school. And one of the high schools where a student, 13-year-old, he was in middle school, high school, had committed suicide is Monte Vista High School. And he's like, your 3 nieces are going to that high school. It's a really high-powered academic school. So I really had a reflective experience over the next 2 years, and I decided to go back to school into ed leadership. But it really took me to a place of reimagining my instruction. How do we teach students to be resilient? How do we teach students humanity? How do we teach students to connect with themselves, their stories, their peers, and also their community? Because ultimately, we're responsible for raising the next leaders of our democracy. And when I went through my program at Rider University, I was blessed to work with my superintendent, Dr. David Adderhold, who's a big SEL advocate. And I really fell in love with, how we could weave SEL into instruction. And I embedded it in my project work as a social studies teacher. And I feel very fortunate and a sense of gratitude to be in a position of leadership to really advocate for SEL. And I don't know how many of you know, but in August of 2017, this past summer, the state adopted, we are the 5th state in the country to adopt socio-emotional learning standards. So on the document, if you want to click on a great organization for SEL, there are 5 core competencies. And this little diagram shows you the competencies, okay? And this is Kazel is out of Chicago, right? And it stands for the Collaborative of Academic, Social, Emotional Learning. All right, the link is in the document in the grid. All right, so it shows you the 5 core skills: self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So I found this in my work as I was going through my graduate program, but I think my big question for you today, for us to discuss as a community of practitioners, a community of learners, is how do we bring those 5 core competencies into the learning environment? And why are they needed?
Could you repeat the competencies one more time?
Sure. The 5 core competencies of socio-emotional learning, which is embedded in the state standards, are self-awareness, self-management.
Can we talk about self-awareness then?
Sure.
That'll be...
Okay, so
Fade! He wants to talk over there. Look at him. Yes. What is self-awareness? All right, I'll go with some of the other head.
I will, but I just wanted to share something that we're doing, and it really ties into self-awareness. We recently purchased the Ignite Your Shine curriculum.
Oh, Lavana's.
We saw her, she actually came to our district in November.
Are you in Tabernacle? With Glenn?
I am. But we really loved what she had to say. So I'm a school psychologist, and so I was able to get the curriculum, and what I'm doing now is going into different classrooms, and I'm really starting it in every grade level, and then encouraging the teachers in the classrooms to continue with the language. So I can do a lesson, I can go in for a half hour, I can, you know, we have whole group discussion, we show video, do an activity, but then I find myself often going into classrooms and still hearing that language used throughout the day about who they are, igniting the shine, or, you know, we've done different lessons. We're doing zones of regulation in a couple of classrooms that need a little more a behavior component as opposed to emotional, but I think that's an important part, is just that consistency and the follow through.
Is anyone else integrating some of the competencies or social awareness or self-awareness, self-management into the learning environment or through a pushing program?
We also do a responsive classroom in the same district, and we have a morning meeting throughout. That's how we start our day. So that's a lot of the times where, and this is my co-teacher, we integrate a lot of the social emotional learning, self-awareness skills into those times, because we're trying to build that community and getting them to realize that the choices that they make not only affect them and their learning, but their friends, all the friends in the classroom. And so getting them to look at themselves, especially we teach kindergarten, they're, you know, it's very egocentric, and getting them to kind of have those eyes of empathy and understanding, like, why do we sit crisscross on the carpet? Like, why do we have our bottoms on the ground? Well, they're starting to raise their hand now and say, because, you know, my friends behind me will be able to see, you know, so sitting that way, you're showing the friends around you that you care about their learning. So that's one time.
But what if I want to get up and I want to move in the back?
That's an option. Oh, yeah.
As long as I'm not distracted.
Yeah, we have
people in front
flexible
of me,
seating
right?
as well. So the talk about that goes into it as well. We read the book, We Are Wonders, and they have a primary book, a picture book, and it's perfect because it talks about how it goes along with the shine. You know, we're all unique, and our differences are what makes us special, and we all learn in our own way. So we've also talked about how we all need different things, different ways to sit, okay? So like if someone does need to stand or they need to be up on their knees, yeah, you're blocking the friends behind you. So then what do you do? So that's all part of that conversation. Oh, you just move over this way so my friend can see. We have wobble stools and different choices they can make with seating, what works for them. And it's all about being aware of what you're thinking and what helps you learn, the best choices to make that helps you learn, but also being aware of the friends around you and what helps them learn. So finding that balance and being thoughtful and responsible citizens.
Yeah, the circles in the responsive classroom, I know you, Pam, was in my earlier facilitation with social justice circles. The idea of circling up and giving the students an opportunity to share something about them, that's where we build these relationships with our students, which are the most important thing we can do. And you can't build a relationship when the power structure is me talking to you all the time. If I don't give you the chance to speak, to learn about what you're doing outside of my classroom, then I don't really know you. And that is, and circles are, you'll find them all over the place throughout restorative justice, responsive classroom, in the different areas, because that's how we get to know each other. And then going to your point about in kindergarten, that's when we start learning gender differences, noticing them, starting to have concrete thoughts about what women can do that men can't, and vice versa. That's when race really starts to become apparent. Kids look different than I do. Is that a negative? Is that a positive? How do we address that? And then if I'm seeing all the books in my classroom of kids that look like white kids, is that the norm? Where am I if I'm a person, a student of color? Where am I in this? Is this education not for me? Where am I represented? How do I connect to what's being out there? So I do love the circles, and those are the conversations of race and gender that have to start in kindergarten. They can't start in 5th grade. They can't start in high school. It's way too late. Kindergarten has to be, and if you could do it in preschool, do it in preschool. But most of us have kindergartens where we start, and that's where it's at. Ash?
My district just recently adopted the responsive classroom as well, and I feel like it's a great thing for this social emotional learning. However, and my question, since you guys have it in your district, were you given time in your schedule to do that responsive classroom? Because we were told to use responsive classroom, but then they didn't give us any time in our schedule. So then if not, how does that look when I try to embed it into my reading and math? If we're not given the time to sit down and do a responsive classroom. Do you have that in your schedule?
I mean, our administration, yeah, we're really blessed because they put that priority. And us as the teachers, like we were just talking about that. That's why we prioritize that time. If it goes a little longer, it's worth it to have those conversations. And so, I mean, we do have that support and backup. And then because of that, and we started the day that way and have those hard conversations and work through that, we have that common language throughout the day and throughout subject areas, and it is a blessing.
But that's where priorities come in. So I have kids for 45 minutes, right? And I do phys ed and health. So even the phys ed days, they come in, we do 5 minutes of instant activity, they go wild, then they come back, we get in our circles. I'm taking, well, that's what we do, we just get crazy. And then I take, it could be sometimes 10 minutes of my class time that we're in a circle and we're talking. But what's important? Is the content more important, or is the relationship more important?
Yeah, and that really strikes a chord with me, because as a secondary teacher for over 16 years, you know, I was told, I started at Hillsborough High School, I was told, don't smile before Thanksgiving, don't touch them, don't hug them, teach the curriculum. So I had to do a lot of unlearning in the process and really just, you know, bring in, you know, my sense of, you know, emotional intelligence, which I believe, even though I'm 42, is still evolving at my age, and, you know, helping to connect the lived and learned experiences in the classroom to what is going on beyond the building that I can connect into the lessons. So what are some structures, other structures or systems, you know, we talked about the responsive classroom, where you can integrate that into the learning environment?
Well, yesterday we did philosophical chairs. So I pulled an article out of Scholastic. It was, should we sneak, is it okay to sneak snacks into the movies? So we, you know, we had philosophical chairs. We have one group on one side, one group on the other. And it was actually a very nice debate. And you had students that would not participate normally in class, participating. And then you also get a lot of other side discussions. And at the same time, you're debating a, you know, a position on whether it's okay to sneak, and then they start feeling more comfortable with each other. And you can also weave in that social emotional. I teach high school, and even with the novels, you can embed a lot of the social emotional. Is this right? And you know, into the curriculum, even if it's a fictional novel. You can also bring in nonfiction material and weave it in. So you don't necessarily have to have that structured curriculum. Depending on what you're teaching, you can weave in some of those messages that, you know, and conversations.
It can and should be in every subject area.
Right.
I went through one of my blogs and I looked at every state standard for the elementary level in every subject area. And there's at least one standard tied to social emotional learning that I copied and pasted in my blog, and I could put it in the notes once I get a chance. So it's there. It's what we pay attention to, or what we.
Even switching roles, where one student
That's a good point.
his position, then I said, okay, now we're going to switch. Now you're going to look at it from the other perspective. And then at the end they asked, well, who won? I said, no one won. We all got our opinions out, and you all won. But even if they just kind of transfer, okay, I think I understand where you're coming from, although I still want to hold on to my.
So did they think it was okay to bring candy into the movie?
Well, some students were no. It's the rules say no, and others were yes. But then when they switched, They argued vehemently, no. So they understood both sides. We didn't vote.
You ever talk about bringing alcohol into the movies?
No.
Sorry, that's the adult version.
These are high school kids, but yeah.
That's a whole other. What was the second?
I have one little thing to say.
Sure.
I am totally in agreement with you, 100%, that the social emotional learning should start in kindergarten. Because by the time they go to a higher grade, it is very, very difficult. And I think as a teacher, you only don't have to follow the structure. You need to get a little bit of time to get to know your students, to know what's going on. You just cannot go and blah, 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 and start teaching the lesson, or quiet, blah, 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 blah. You gotta know how they feel. You need that interaction and build that relationship. And for that reason, like for example, there was a kid that she used to mumble a lot, blah, 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 blah. And then I said, so we were reading, we were doing things, and then we were writing a poetry. She wrote a poetry. But then when she wrote the poetry, it really scared me, because when she wrote, she said, I don't want to be here any longer. Blah, blah, blah. I am terrified being alone. So there were a lot of things that I didn't see it was that much positive. So it really caught my attention then. I spoke to the girl and said, tell me what's going on here, what's happening.
Sure.
And then she was telling me, oh, I hear one voice telling me this thing. Then I hear another voice telling me the opposite, that this is a thing. And I say, oh no, this is not. I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a social worker. I am not a psychologist. But then I said, something is not right in here. So immediately I called for support. And but that's the way how you start getting like a 5 minutes talk, 5 minutes talk or 10 minutes talk in the morning with the students, and you get to know them, what's happening with them. Maybe their parents are going through divorce. You see this behavior, and that behavior affects the other student. So that is important, I think.
And this is Heidi from.
Surface things like, you mentioned the circles and the side conversation that emerges. You're going to hear things that you're like, whoa, I have to act upon this. And, you do reach out to guidance counselors or the school nurse, and it becomes a conversation about the students' health and wellness and their well-being ultimately. And you do have to reach out for resources. So don't feel like you can't do that. So self-awareness and social awareness, any thoughts about how you integrate that into, or maybe think a little bit about what you're doing currently that you can share out with the rest of us?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. We use the growth mindset with our kids. It originally started in kindergarten, but now has really taken off in our district. I work in East Windsor.
Okay.
So I work there.
I'm glad you're here today.
Yeah. So we have the new SEL program that's a push-in, but with that came the growth mindset for everybody, which is changing their attitudes from I can't and I won't to I'm willing to try, or let me try this a different way, or if I keep going, this will get better. To change their whole mindset of I can't do this, so I'm just giving up, to let me try a different option, let me open up another door, let me ask for help. So it's going to take some time, but it will slowly but surely change their attitudes towards what they're learning, how they're learning, and why they're learning.
As long as we don't let the growth mindset say, keep doing the same thing over and over again. If they're struggling doing it that way, telling a kid growth mindset, keep doing it, isn't a growth mindset. And you talked about, let's find a different way. And as a teacher, that critical pedagogy, right? Am I teaching this in the most effective way? Is there another way? Why aren't they getting it? Am I failing? Instead of just blaming the kid all the time. Abe?
Yeah, I was just wondering, you talked specifically, at the beginning about race and equity, and I come from a district in Bergen County that the majority is Black and Latino. It's always been that way. Now we're into a struggle with another neighboring district that doesn't want to integrate. And that integration battle has been going on since the 80s. So there's a lot of factors there. And I know I've been there 18 years and we haven't addressed it, you know, and we're still dancing around the elephant in the room. So I come to these ed camps, I'm really inspired, you know, by people like Justin, a bunch of other people. And so I'm wondering, you know, these ideas, these programs, you know, I hear these districts, and I'm sure you're struggling in certain areas, you know, I'm not diminishing that, but in districts like myself and other inner city districts, you know, I'm just wondering that, you know, leaders and education leaders and parents, all they want to see is test scores. They don't care about, you know, self-reflection. They'll do that at home, you know, especially with Black and, you know, Latino children. You know, the Latino children, you got to learn English, you know, and that's a mindset that's fixed in parents. I'm not putting that aside. And then you have, they got to behave. That's the only time that they do reflection. Okay, as a vice principal, you want to come in, I'm like, hey, you know, we talk about a lot of different things, and we have a PBSIS program, we have responsive this classroom, but then we have like 10 different initiatives because we're a struggling district, we're this, we're that, we're at the bottom, all that. So that's something that we have to deal with, and there's racial overtones there, big time. They don't say it because they don't want to get in trouble, but there's a lot of, no, they need to learn how to read and write, blah, blah, blah. They, you know, who's they? We don't know who's they. The majority of Black, you know. So I'm throwing that stuff in there. But what I'm saying is all that stuff is very valuable. How do you balance that? How do you bring that in, you know? Not just, oh, we have that program, we're doing it, you know? So, you know, I've been in the district for a long time, and, you know, keep on trying to tap into that. But there's a big mindset out there. You know,
So I have a
that
comment just to piggyback what you said. Are these programs like flavor of the month, or this is what we should do, this is the thing to do? So at one time we had Pathways to Success, and there's all these programs. So now this is another program, and I'm not knocking it. I really don't know enough about it.
Sure.
I know we have an emotional intelligence. Are these just programs that we are putting out, but they're like the flavor of the month, or this is the thing we should be doing now, or everybody's talking about this? Do you have this at your school? But do we really, really get to where we need to get to, and that's to solve some of those issues?
And I think leadership is reciprocal. We have a duty as educators to teach our leaders how to learn and unlearn and relearn. So I think that we all have the power as teachers, citizens, to communicate up our frustration. And, you know, sometimes it is a revolving door of leadership, so you get new initiatives in and you get that saturation. And how do you balance those initiatives with what is really at the core of education, which is holistic, humanistic? You know, the kid is the focus. So what I found in my work is that the mission, like messaging out the mission, like sprinkling it out through the vocabulary of, you know, the CASEL standards, which are now the New Jersey, you know, socio-emotional learning standards, responsible decision-making. And I think a big element of it is, you know, if you want to go whole child, every child, it's also whole teacher, every teacher. Leaders have to step up and do the heavy lifting and be coaches, advocates, protect their teachers who are willing to take those risks. And once you see those early adapters moving and taking risks with SEL or speaking out and saying, hey, listen, we got to slow down here. We have to do less. Less is more. I mean, that's a great, you know, expression to really drill down into what matters for your community. These are our kids. They're somebody else's kids. We probably spend more time with other people's kids than our own kids. So how do we ignite, you know, you talk about shine, how do we ignite this voice of teachers in this period? Test scores and standards and initiative overload.
There, we have somebody who wants to chime in. Go ahead, Heidi.
Hi, this is Heidi from Las Vegas, and I wanted to answer your question regarding programs. PBIS and all those other initiatives are a program, but the restorative justice is not a program. And I think restorative justice is very powerful, and it could start in one classroom and then trickle down. But that's where you're getting into those courageous conversations with your students. I do it with my third graders. They problem solve. Dad just went to jail. There might be those issues, and how do we cope with? There might be someone else's father that's in prison they could talk to. And meeting those needs is more powerful than connecting it to any standard that you teach. If you just spend and make those connections for 10 minutes, it's amazing what the rest of your period or your day with your learners is going to be. So just making those connections, like Justin said earlier, is going to get your bang for your buck. Because sometimes our students just want to vent or someone to listen to. They want to make sure that we care, and building that safe environment and culture within our classroom is very powerful for learners from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade.
But I think some of the great teachers have always done this. Now it's just packaged in a different way. Like, you get Rita Pearson. You're going to tell me she wasn't worried about social emotional learning from the door when she started teaching day one? So I think sometimes we get excited and we want these new ideas and we want to repackage it and whatever. But getting to know your kids should have been teaching 101. Like, you don't need a standard for that at social emotional. You don't need restorative. You don't need it specific to that. I think now we're trying to figure out a way to give the teachers the tools to use it in a little better manner so it's explicit instead of in the hidden curriculum. Ash?
I'm wondering if it's becoming more like a program and like making sure it's embedded in your teaching because of this day and age where I feel like there's more technology and more like less conversations. Like when I was having conversations with your family, you go outside and play with your friends and you have more social interactions with people. And I feel like in this day and age, I feel like it's kind of diminished a little bit. And so they're not getting it as much outside of school. So now I feel like maybe it's becoming more and more important to incorporate into your teaching. And now they want to come out with more like standards that need to be embedded into your teaching to make sure that you are covering it. I'm wondering if that, because of this day and age and because of all the technology and everything that's out there now, that's maybe why it's.
I want to piggyback with a question. Or is it that, you have so much harassment, intimidation, and bullying in our schools, and stuff has started, and ended in our schools and online, and with all this stuff. So then now, it's a value. It's great. I'm not against it, but you could have that overload. I'm not discounting it, and I agree. And all this case, so I've been following that. You're like, how do you balance all that? How do you go ahead and attack, provide intervention for the struggling readers and the learners and everything, but at the same time provide that, and then get your staff on board, and move them towards that direction. I think it takes that leadership, because I know I'm always going up, side, down, and around. I'm all over the place, but trying to go ahead and show them about all this.
But what I'm hearing is if you don't address the social or the emotional part, then that's going to affect their learning.
Most definitely.
So by having maybe that 5-minute conversation in the morning, debriefing or just venting, kind of, okay, it's out, and now maybe I can just focus on this. Or just hearing a kind word or some, it'll be okay, or go, here, you can do, you need this, okay, you take a time out, just do it later. So I think it goes hand in hand. You have to address the emotional, or you're not going to get the which is what obviously our objectives are is the learning.
Well, that's the phrase, you can't teach Bloom's until you take care of Maslow, right? So we have to take care of that hierarchy of needs, and a psychological safety and a loving environment is needed before we can get to the content piece. And if a kid doesn't feel like you like them for whatever reason, or a kid can't relate to you, or a kid can't relate to the material going on, how are they gonna make any connections there?
I think something we also need to consider is looking at ourselves. We spoke at the same conference that we had in November. Amanda Britt had come out and she did a whole child lesson on the teachers. So she related that all to how we are taking care of ourselves, because I think we really don't have the ability to focus on the social emotional learning of our students if we ourselves are not in the right place.
When we try to do that, it becomes a problem, right? So we've heard of the phrase time is money, but in looking at where education is going, is time is data, right? So I'm supposed to build in the schedule, social emotional activities or whatever, but I have to explain to my administrator why I'm falling behind in the lesson, because every minute counts and I'm not pushing my kid toward that skill, and we keep pushing them towards all these skills that are not helping them, and we are burnt out as teachers because when we want to spend time and try to relate to our kids, there are 10 deadlines due. We got to do this new data tracker, because when we were trying to take care of a situation that we knew was going to make it hard for them to get that skill, we fell behind and now we're getting in trouble for it. So how do we do that balance? Because I really feel like relating to the kids, understanding the kids will make them better learners, but the higher up is having an issue in understanding that. So now it just looks like I'm an ineffective teacher when I'm trying to do more of the social rather than the content.
That's exactly what you said. It's the administration, and I think that's what makes the difference. Like our administration says, like right out, when it comes to the question of teaching content or teaching character always wins out. You know, so like that's what you need. So I feel like I just feel for you, because I came from a district in Maryland like that, and it was extremely difficult. And so I really think administration is that's where the biggest change will happen, that mindset there.
I would venture to say that I hear your trouble. Do you mind me asking what subject you teach specifically?
English, but special ed resource.
I only speak to my experience. I think that when I'm teaching in the classroom, I want to make sure that every lesson relates to something that the kids talk about. Like it has to be about social emotional. So I hear you about the character and the content. They need to be infused. I think that all teachers need to be doing that. And if you don't have, like, it should be leveraged in the building where at least, I know social studies, we get a lot of slack. So as a social studies teacher, I'm able to do that. I still get tested, right? And I still actually have responsibility for data, but my data is one of the best in the district. And the reason why that's the case is because I'm always pushing my kids to interact with the content on levels where they're collaborating, talking about solutions, and using the content that they've learned and applying it to what we talk about in the present day. And once again, I'm only speaking to my experience, and I think that, like, as an educator, of course we need restorative justice. I always try to bring it in. It's also about the way you speak to your kids. It's also about the way you resolve issues. It's also about the way you're being proactive with issues. I think oftentimes we're very reactive. Something happens, we punish, or we have the conversation, have it before the problem starts. And so, like, those are ways that you can do it every single day and have it in your like curriculum. So if you're teaching an English class and you have to do like what's called citing evidence from text, why not pick a text that's about treating people better, like Omega Martin? Like, you know, do you understand?
Yeah,
do you feel me?
Yeah. Thank you.
And just to clarify, that's exactly what it meant. So it's not don't teach content. It's prioritize that and integrate it. So thank you. That's awesome.
No, I totally get it, but like my immediate admin, excellent, great. I love her dearly, but it's the disconnect between the immediate and the higher up. So who do I listen to, higher up or the immediate? And that's part of the frustration.
Has anyone been fired because they weren't doing what the higher up said to the team?
Yes.
We have a high teacher turnover, to be very transparent.
Were they let go, or were the people leaving?
Let go.
Yeah,
But
so
some of it is systematic. Like, let's transfer you to another place that we know you're not going to cope.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
talking
right.
about that. Like 7 teachers were let go because they didn't follow. They said that they're focusing on the kids, and because they didn't follow the top, they were let go.
Yeah, and that's where you have, there's no easy answer
That's
with that.
Just let go.
I just joined the middle school. I was at the high school, so I'm still learning stuff.
Were
with
you
them.
shifted over because they?
Oh no, I made that shit because I was just
You know, you could also infuse that a focus. You could just refer back to the IEP. You know what those goals are, and I'm sure some of those IEPs have that social emotional learning piece. And if not, when you go to the next annual for those students, make sure you put them, because they're gonna need your input. So put it in there and say, hey, they need this, they need that. You can, what that's the best. Put it in there.
No, I know that, but and that's
how you can
the
defend.
beauty.
That's how you can defend what you're doing in the classroom. Because if anybody any higher up comes in, you can go ahead and say, hey,
You're following the law.
you're following the law. The IEP
But
trumps
I feel like I
anybody.
get more leniency because I'm a sped
Right.
teacher. But I'm worried about the gen ed kids. Why do they have to be special ed to get that social emotional love? That's my
Well, actually,
frustration.
then take a look at here's another thing. Take a look at the mission statement of the district, because the mission
Goals.
statement of the
Goals.
district always does that high and lofty type of, we're going to prepare them to be active participants and creators in the 21st century workforce and college, all that stuff, And you can say, hey, in order for you to do that, you need to know self-reflection, know yourself, know how to work in a team. That's all social part of it, And you can tap that in and say, I'm doing the mission.
Yeah, because it's sad, because I have kids like, how do I become a special ed student so I can get in your class? I was like, it doesn't work that way.
We have a behavior, in my building we have a behaviorist, we have a mental health specialist, we have a social worker, and I teach ESL, and like my kids don't have access to that because they're not special ed.
Right.
So I have a student who came in first grade, and he came from China, so I have trouble communicating with him. I think he has Asperger's. It's very challenging, and I have no resources. I can't even talk to the mental health specialist about him. I can't talk to the behaviorist about him because he's not in the night. So it's incredibly frustrating for me because
I think
he needs help.
I just-
I don't know how to help him.
I just think that you need to have a conversation with those people, because there's no reason that they can't be a part of that team and a part of, a great resource. I spend at this time, probably half of my time is in general education classes. And I mean, it's great for us because we are, receiving a lot of support from our administrative team, but they're coming, I'm a school psychologist, but I have general education teachers coming up to me one after the other. I hear you did this in so-and-so's classroom. Do you think you can do it in mine? And we're receiving support. We're trying to come up with other ways to get me into those classrooms.
So can I just clarify for a second? So you're the school psychologist, you're part of the child study team and everything, and you go into classrooms and teach lessons to the gen ed, and there have to be special ed kids in that classroom for you to go.
That's a great.
Yeah, my school social worker.
We're doing it
does gen ed
class-wise,
too.
first grade, after Thanksgiving, the week after Thanksgiving. We actually block off a half hour from Monday through Friday in the afternoon, and we're getting the entire first grade together in the gym. And we're going to kind of take off on like a social emotional learning journey together, and then kind of rotate from there.
Right.
But it is with a lot of support.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't get.
Your name?
Yeah, Abraham.
No, lady.
My name?
Khadija?
Yeah.
Khadija. So I'm hearing you because I used to teach in a district where it was similar like that. Now, do the teachers create their own curriculum?
No.
Or, so it's all created, all given to them, and you just have to teach it. So what you're saying is, if you effectively do not teach it, then
There you are.
And it's scripted.
It's scripted, but our instructional coach has been great in saying that the curriculum doesn't own you, you own the curriculum, but it's a disconnect between her and the higher admin.
And just to close on that, like Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do what you do. So always return to the why, and start to voice out your concerns to the union. No, it should be people and practice, not programs and products and progress. That will come in time. So thank you for this worthy conversation, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.